Hi, thank you for joining my session on teaching service learning using problem-based learning, social emotional learning, and gifted standards. This is my 5th year of teaching as a gifted intervention specialist. Prior to that, I taught 5th and 6th grade ELA and science and took a couple of years off to pursue a career in HR and executive recruiting, but knew my heart was really dedicated to education. I am a former gifted student myself, and I am also the mom to 2 gifted students. One is a social emotional gifted kid, and the other is what I would call a gifted underachiever. This is the first year we have offered service learning and leadership in our district as a semester-long course at the junior high. I taught a small unit last year at the intermediate school, which is 5th and 6th grade students, and it was kind of my test course to see if this could work and if there's enough content to have a semester-long course, and I found out pretty quickly there is. So we decided we would offer the course to 7th and 8th graders at the junior high, giving preference to students who have a gifted identification. However, a gifted ID is not a requirement to take the course. I do warn parents and students, though, that the rigor and the expectations of the course are set towards students who have a gifted identification. During the course, we focus on a number of professional skills, communication, teamwork, leadership skills, time management, goal setting, brainstorming, research, critical thinking, and problem solving. These skills have been identified by Forbes, Inc. magazine, and Time magazine as being the most desirable professional skills sought by employers. And all of these are taught and utilized throughout this course. Other professional and career skills we work on during this class include etiquette, having a work ethic, presenting yourself in a professional manner, and these skills come into play a lot during this course as students work with the administration, area nonprofits, and their peers. Another big component of the class is self-discovery, self-awareness, and stress management. As students navigate through the obstacles and challenges associated with their projects, they are going to experience stress. So we spend quite a bit of time at the beginning of the semester exploring the social emotional needs they may have. The curriculum in my service learning and leadership class is based on NAGC gifted programming standards. So the first segment of those standards, it falls under self-understanding. Students spend a lot of time during this course identifying their own interests, strengths, and identities. We focus on areas of emotional development where they need to work. We also spend quite a bit of time throughout the course reflecting on our behaviors, our habits, our weaknesses, and our strengths. And we focus a lot on how to capitalize on our strengths while also working on those areas in which we need to improve. A lot of what we do in this class is based on goal setting, and I check in regularly with my students to discuss how they're coming along with attaining those goals and if they need to make adjustments to their plans. I also discuss, and I'm pretty open with them about my own goals and any setbacks I'm encountering. In the past 10 years, so much emphasis has been placed on growth mindset, but I don't think teaching growth mindset in a silo benefits students as much as teaching growth mindset and then continuing to talk about goal attainment, adjustment of goals, when plans go awry, I think they need to see a model for this and somebody continuing despite setbacks, reaching their goals. Um, the self-understanding piece also comes into play as we move into working in teams. They need to understand themselves, and they also need to be able to understand that not everyone is the same and that everybody has different strengths, different weaknesses, and we need to work to help bring out the best in ourselves and our peers. Another focus of the NAGC programming standards is awareness of needs. Um, to me, this means teaching students to be resourceful and to develop the ability to interact with peers that have the same passion for service learning that they do. I encourage students to seek out experts and to reach out to the nonprofits with whom they're working to ask questions if they run into roadblocks or obstacles. Um, they also need to develop the ability to seek help when they need it. I think a lot of our gifted students are used to always being right, and they are hesitant to put up that cry for help if they're running into an issue or a problem. And part of what I try to instill in the students during this class is it's okay not to know the answer. You need to develop the skills to find a way around a problem or a way through a problem, and who are your resources? What is the best way to get the information you need so you can move forward? Um, so part of this course takes students well outside of their comfort zones, and but it also allows them to build confidence as they engage in conversations with experts, peers, nonprofit leaders to find solutions to problems within their community. If we look at the programming standard under personal competence that I listed, the service learning projects are developed from start to finish by the students. They get to use their creativity via art, writing, acting, etc. to promote their projects. They also take numerous risks in speaking to adults, leaving voicemails, communicating with our district's administration and our Board of Education. Um, but I feel the more they experience these challenges and things that take them out of that comfort zone, the more confidence they develop over the course of the semester. And then if we look at the next programming standard, responsibility and leadership, we spend a lot of time focusing on the qualities of a good leader throughout the course and discussing how we can develop these skills. Active listening, effective communication in both written and verbal form are emphasized throughout the course. We also cover lessons on conflict resolution and accountability and how to work in teams with differing personalities. As we all know, social emotional learning is at the forefront, and we need to be aware of it for all students. But we also need to remember that our gifted students have social emotional needs as well. According to CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, SEL is the process through which children and adults acquire and apply the skills to manage emotion, relationships, and decision making. Statistics show that although schools have been placing more emphasis on social emotional learning in the past decade, suicide is still the second leading cause of death for youth ages 12 to 24. And Students have so many pressures that were non-existent 10 years ago. We have social media, 24/7 access to information, heightened pressure to perform at exceptionally high levels academically, and now we have COVID-19 and social isolation. So all of these stressors weigh heavily on our students. In June of 2019, ODE adopted SEL standards for all students in grades K through 12. How these are implemented is determined district by district. Some districts are investing a lot more time and resources into SEL, while others are spending less time on this as it's untested extra content that doesn't count toward our state report card. I am a very strong believer that SEL needs to be present within our curriculums regardless of the course. Adults who enter the workforce without developing social emotional skills are at a huge disadvantage. Ohio has identified the following competencies for social emotional learning, and each of these is addressed throughout the service learning course. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. As the course and the projects develop, new social emotional skills come into play. For instance, the ability to resolve conflicts and consider other people's perspective plays a big role as teams work together to plan and implement their projects, and especially when their plans don't go according to plan. I find that a lot of my professional peers tend to believe that a gifted identification means guaranteed success. These kids are going to complete all of their assignments and they're going to do everything exceptionally well and they're going to be focused students and they're going to roll with the punches and really have resilience. However, anyone who's been around gifted students and has taught them for a while knows that there are many effective characteristics that go along with the gifted identification that make these students very highly susceptible to stress and anxiety. Many gifted students experience social emotional difficulties as they progress through school. The more rigorous the content and the more advanced the courses, the more we start to see, especially at the junior high, early high school level, these social emotional needs develop. Asynchronous development, difficulty relating to same age peers, perfectionism, avoidance of risk, high self-criticism, and heightened sensitivity are some of these. Allowing students to become more self-aware and helping them to develop healthy strategies to cope with stressors is critical to their personal and academic development. The beauty of a service learning class is you can work this into the curriculum so that it's addressed directly. And I found that it's been very beneficial to students. So problem-based learning is different from project-based learning. A lot of times we use those two terms interchangeably, but really problem-based learning is learning that does not have a predetermined answer. There is not a right answer. There could be multiple answers. There could be, a myriad of solutions to a problem. There's really a lot of open-endedness and a lot of flexibility in problem-based learning. This may make some students uncomfortable, I found, because they're used to wanting or needing to have the right answer. So a lot of service learning for me has been training the students to think in a different way, to look for different solutions, to be more open, and to realize that Solution A may not work, so we have to move on with solution B. By having a problem-based learning class, students are working at the highest levels of Bloom's taxonomy. They're analyzing, they're synthesizing, they're constantly evaluating their own progress, and they're creating solutions. So it really does raise the level of rigor in the classroom to have them working on problem-based learning. Um, and research shows that students who are engaged in problem-based learning develop stronger learner identities. They're very motivated, they're highly engaged, and they become self-directed learners. They don't have to be fed the information. They want to seek it out on their own. Problem-based learning also puts the students in a position of power to decide how to help their chosen nonprofit organizations. The projects that are created belong to the students. These are not my projects. These are student projects. And as I've mentioned, it's on them from start to finish. I will facilitate and help, but the solutions and how to complete the project and get to the finish line, that is on the students. I'll help guide, but I will not do or plan their projects for them. So talking about service learning. In service learning, students learn educational standards through tackling real life problems in their community. To me, service learning is the ultimate way to incorporate gifted standards into a curriculum. It connects students with their communities through community service, exploration, and action. It allows them to participate in self-awareness and to pursue their individual interests. And the emphasis is placed on developing critical thinking and problem-solving skills while utilizing the students' own talents. Service learning curriculums also provide opportunities for educational experiences that help them develop socially, morally, and ethically. By working in their communities, gifted students can come to a greater understanding of how others experience life in different settings from themselves. They're not insulated from their greater community, whether that be within their neighborhoods or within southwestern or northeastern Ohio. And it really provides a path toward empathy, which I think is a hard thing to teach. Unfortunately, our core curricular classes don't provide many up-close opportunities to develop skills such as empathy or the empowerment to make a difference. So the gains from service learning for students are self-esteem, leadership, and a sense of accomplishment. And I don't know if we can always see that in other core curricular classrooms. Hi, so during this portion of the presentation, I'm going to go over how my classroom is set up and also dive a little bit into my social emotional learning unit, how we work with magnified giving and set up our partnerships with nonprofits, and also how I evaluate students throughout the course. I will tell you, my way is not the only way to do this. You can be as creative as you want. You can bring in other partners. You can really, the sky's the limit with service learning curriculum. This is how I've set it up for my class. And I can tell you right now, things I did first semester, some of it I've put by the wayside. I've added some things, I've tweaked things. So my service learning class, depending on the circumstances we're in will likely continue to change with each semester. So, first off, as a challenge for me were COVID restrictions. Normally, I would have had guest speakers coming into the class to visit the students at the beginning of the semester. They would have had an in-person meeting with Roger Grine, who is the founder of Magnified Giving, who is our partner organization, and I'll get a little bit more into Magnified Giving later in this segment. And we'd be volunteering in person. So with COVID, all of that changed. So I had to be creative and come up with some different ways to give back when we can't be face-to-face or in person. So one way I did that was working with the school to find out how my service learning class could help our community through the school. What we came up with is I'm working with our food services department, and they are in charge of distributing lunches for our students who are staying at home and who have chosen remote learning. So each week, our food services unit had to pack close to 400 lunches. And that was a lot of manpower, a lot of time. And so what we decided to do is every Tuesday now, a section of my students goes to the cafeteria. They deliver all the food for the packed lunches to our junior high cafeteria on Tuesdays. My students set up an assembly line and they pack the lunches to go home with families for the next week. It's a great experience. The kids love it. They're able to knock out a ton of lunches in 45 minutes while having fun and maintaining social distancing. So that was one creative way we came up with to have in-person, hands-on volunteering. This spring, we're also doing a beautification project for the school. We're hoping to add some landscaping as we're getting a new wing built onto our junior high. And we're also planning to help the PTO with teacher appreciation gifts. Those are just a couple of whole class contributions that we've come up with. Some challenges we've had are that sometimes we're remote. We closed down for a whole week after Thanksgiving, and students still had to finish working with their organizations and getting their service learning projects across the finish line. So figuring out how we can get teams to work together when we aren't physically together has been a challenge. How do students communicate with each other? Is everyone sharing their phone numbers? Is everyone sharing times when they can schedule calls? There's only so much we can do with Zoom breakout rooms during the one period a day that we have our students. Sometimes the work isn't finished and it's going to take extra time. And so, especially when we're remote, having multiple ways for students to communicate with one another and get back in touch with me is so important, and you have to think of all those different logistics. And then group work, how I've set up the classroom internally, because students form into nonprofit organization and social cause groups, I have seated students near their project group members so they're able to do turn-in talks while maintaining social distance. I've also been really blessed because of when my class time is, I'm able to use the cafeteria to spread the groups out at our huge lunch tables. So this has helped tremendously, especially when we're doing the preliminary work for our projects. Because students are creating donation boxes, they're making posters, they're making advertisements, they need to be sitting side by side talking and sharing ideas and creating things. So that has been wonderful for me to be able to use the cafeteria. A lot of times during the beginning of the year, when the weather was nice, I would have students meet outside so we could break out into groups and still have plenty of social distancing. But the big thing for me, I guess, is to just know to roll with the punches. Last semester, the students and I many times had to be resilient and flexible. And I think the flexibility and the resilience has to come from the students and their teacher modeling it. And some days it's harder to do that than others. So I start off the semester course with an SEL unit. In this unit, we learn about our personalities, our tendencies, stress triggers, and various stress management techniques. Many of the students come in and want to jump into projects, but I explained to them at the beginning, there's a reason why I do things in a certain order, and that learning about yourselves and how to deal with stress and how to communicate is going to help them later when they get into their projects. I kind of call it the fluff stuff because some of my students don't really understand at the beginning of the semester how important it is, but by the end of the semester, they 100% understand why I taught things in the order in which I did. So basically, they learn about what stress is and where most of their stress comes from. A lot of the stress in the surveys my students complete for this unit comes from school. There's a lot of pressure there. And then we also learn about the physical and emotional reactions to stress. I spend time talking about and examining the biology and the chemistry behind these reactions. Why do our hearts beat faster? Why do we get all sweaty when we get nervous? And how do our bodies react? And what are some strategies that we can have to calm ourselves down so we're not a puddle of sweat when giving a presentation? And I also spend time going over how being gifted relates to students' reactions to stress. So we talk about gifted intensities, and we examine and talk about and learn about the intensities they each possess and how we can use those to better prepare ourselves to handle stress. So these next few slides are just some examples of worksheets that I use when we're going through the SEL unit. So this is a portion of the student stress survey that I give to my students. This is a worksheet I give to the students where they have to evaluate how their body reacts to stress. And it's funny because the kids really get into some great conversations about how they feel when they get stressed. And I've had some great examples myself when I get stressed. So this is a really good bonding experience for the kids to share and talk about this and talk about the flight, fight, or freeze response and why our bodies react the way they do. And then I also get into, as I said, the science, the chemistry, and the biology behind why we react the way we do. I've had the kids have teased me a little bit and have stated that this isn't supposed to be a science class, but the science behind how our bodies and our minds work together is so important when it comes to our self-awareness and how to handle stressors. So this part of the SEL unit is probably my favorite. The students take a personality test to learn more about themselves, and then we use this information to work on strategies to cope with stress and pressure and anxiety. So I have the students take a Myers-Briggs type test on 16personalities.com. And I think it's funny that the results come back the way they do because this test had me figured out 100%. So once the results come back for the students, we work together to analyze the results and really explore how our tendencies and our personalities influence how we handle stress and our relationships with others. And this comes into play again when we start working in teams, because we're not all going to be working with the same personality type. So after we've learned about ourselves, we really start to dive into our service learning projects and magnified giving. Magnified Giving is our partner for service learning. It's a nonprofit that is dedicated to teaching students to become philanthropists for life. On the Magnified Giving website, their mission is to educate, inspire, and engage students in philanthropy and to touch the hearts and minds of teens, lighten the concerns of others, and magnify the impact of philanthropy. The organization partners with schools throughout Ohio. Schools implement the program how they see fit. Mount Notre Dame in Cincinnati, Little Miami Junior High, and Morrow and Lebanon High School are some of the schools that have partnered with Magnified Giving to teach service learning through semester-long elective classes. Other schools choose to pursue and partner with Magnified Giving through clubs or as an entire school. It is completely up to your school and you as an individual how you implement this program. So again, as I said before, the sky's kind of the limit. Magnified Giving's program teaches that everyone can give if they're willing to donate their time, talent, and or treasure. So by time, we mean volunteering, giving your time to help others. Talent, it could be sewing, writing, drawing, creating, building to help others. And then treasure is giving through financial means. Some districts choose to give by hosting fundraisers or by creating and selling items to raise money for the nonprofits. At my junior high, we focus primarily on donating our time and our talent. We also focus on Magnified Giving's process, which establishes the foundation for the program. We explore social issues. We research nonprofits. We don't site visit anymore due to COVID, but we do volunteer. And then we review grant applications, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then we choose a recipient to receive a grant from Magnified Giving. So each semester, to kick off our relationship with Magnified Giving, the students take time to understand that philanthropy is not always about giving money. We explore how to give in other ways that emphasize our talents and our interest. We also meet Roger Grind, the founder of Magnified Giving. I've linked Roger's story in the handouts. He is an incredible man who has overcome so many obstacles throughout his life and has dedicated his life to helping others. The students watch the linked video in class and they come up with further questions they'd like to ask him. This year we interviewed Roger via Zoom. So he came into our classrooms through a Zoom meeting and answered the students' questions, and it's just a wonderful experience. As a result of this, I also take the time to teach students how to draft and write thank you letters. We we talk about how important it is to show gratitude and how thoughtful handwritten thank you notes leave a lasting impression on the recipient. Um, I took some time off of teaching to work in HR and executive recruiting, and I can tell you as a recruiter, a well thought out thank you note puts you ahead of other candidates. And I also stress that to the students that this isn't just a classroom skill, this is a life skill. So after the students learn about magnified giving and Roger and what the organization does, um, students begin to do research, and magnified giving has identified or categorized social causes into 12 areas. And I provide a brief description of each of the 12 areas, and then I have the students conduct further research using the Magnified Giving website and other resources to learn more about each of these social causes. And then I follow that up with a survey asking the students to rank the social causes that they're most interested in on a scale of 1 to 3. From these surveys, students are grouped by social cause. The students work together to research and find nonprofit organizations that they want to work with. The students plan and prepare to make phone calls to these organizations to establish a relationship and to determine whether they can partner with one another to complete a service project. Students learn to make the phone calls, they learn to draft scripts for voicemails and how to leave messages, and they practice speaking and having conversations on the phone. Believe it or not, most of my students are petrified to make phone calls to someone they don't know. So before they call, we spend time role playing and providing feedback to each other. I also like to use a tool called Flipgrid, and I require all of my students to record a voicemail in case they don't reach their nonprofit, and their voicemail cannot be longer than 30 seconds. I will have a link to the Flipgrid in the PDF materials so you can see what one of my students did. In addition to researching, making phone calls, leaving voicemails, and writing thank you notes, we cover a lot of other life skills that students are going to need to be successful as they pursue careers. I teach a unit focusing on active listening and reflective listening. We practice, we role play, and we learn how to become better listening or better listeners. And we revisit listening skills throughout the semester because as groups begin to work on projects and they're under stress, sometimes the ability to really listen to one another goes by the wayside. So it's really important that they learn how to do this early on in the semester. Once students have partnered with a nonprofit and have decided on a project, this is where the real work begins. Um, the successful execution and completion of a service learning project relies heavily on planning, preparation, and anticipating setbacks. As you guys know, executive functioning skills are a struggle for many gifted students. A lot of our students have difficulty planning and preparing for long-term projects and have a tendency to procrastinate or get lost in the details or get completely overwhelmed when looking at a long-term project. So I incorporate mini lessons to go over how to map out long-term projects. Our service learning projects take approximately 8 to 10 weeks to complete. So we have lessons on how to map out the project week by week, how to identify and anticipate potential issues that may cause delays. Also, how will they communicate with their group members, and how will they stay in contact if we go remote? And then if plan A doesn't work, do we have a plan B, a plan C? So we spend a lot of time in the planning and execution phase and revisiting our social and emotional learning objectives and ways to cope with stress and how to communicate with each other. During this phase, students must also seek approval from our district and our Board of Education through a live presentation. So in their groups, students put together a PowerPoint or Google Slide presentation to introduce their nonprofit, the social causes supports, and what they're planning to do for their service learning projects. Um, and they also have to pay special attention, especially when presenting to our board, how they are going to stay safe during COVID-19. Another section of the course that we spend some time on is examining what leadership looks like and what it doesn't look like. We discuss, is a bossy person necessarily a good leader? Why wouldn't a bossy person be a good leader? Um, I bring in articles from Forbes, Inc. magazine, and the Society of Human Resource Management that discuss qualities of exceptional leaders. And students spend time reading these articles, gathering this information, and then conducting self evaluations of their own leadership qualities. And they identify from there qualities they need to work on and want to work on, and plan activities to improve these skills. In the earlier unit involving self-discovery, students identify their strengths and weaknesses. And using this knowledge, they need to decide how they're going to best contribute to their team. Are they super organized and great at managing tasks and calendars? Or are they creative and really good at creating promotional items? What is their greatest strength? They use this knowledge to better contribute to their group. And each person is encouraged to choose tasks that align with their strengths. I do a lot of front loading to explore these skills with students and for them to develop some self-awareness, because this is really where things can fall apart, is during this group work. Getting everyone to pull their weight is difficult. Learning to listen, use their strengths, it's difficult. So by really front loading the course with SEL lessons and activities and examining conflict resolution, we can handle the hiccups as they come along. In addition to our service learning projects and ways that students can utilize their time and talents, I also spend some time focused on the concept of treasure. This is where my lessons on personal finance come in. Students learn what they can do with their money. They can either spend it, save it, or donate it. And I provide students with several lessons on credit cards, debt, and saving versus investing. And we talk about how to grow our treasure. We also examine the stress that's associated with not being financially secure and how avoiding debt can help alleviate stress and how to budget. During the treasure unit, we also discuss grants versus loans, which leads us to the grant magnified giving will give to a nonprofit of our choice. So first semester of this year, our students chose the following nonprofits to help. We did a collection for Matthew 25 Ministries, which helps other organizations throughout Southwestern Ohio with disaster relief preparedness. So we collected face masks and hand sanitizers and other COVID relief items for that organization. Sub-Zero helps veterans who are homeless, and we did a large coat boot and sock drive for them. Ronald McDonald House Charities benefits the families of children who are in the hospital. We did a collection of toiletries for the families staying at Ronald McDonald House because many times parents go to Ronald McDonald House and they may be in a hurry and they might not have all of the toiletries they need. So we put together care packages for the Ronald McDonald House, and this is a picture of my students who came in over Christmas break because we continued to get donations, and they made those gift bags that you see behind the students. We also had a drive for the Highland County Animal Shelter where we had 2 vanfuls full of food and cages and cleaning supplies and blankets donated for the animals at the shelter. And then our mental health public service announcement group, they created public service announcements to be broadcast to the students throughout the school and posted on our website. So they did little 30-second clips and they were comical, but it was basically stress relief tips to survive the holidays. All right, so evaluation of students. In the end, not every project is going to come to fruition. There are going to be hiccups, there are going to be obstacles, and sometimes we're not able to work around those. So I'm really looking at how much the students grow over the course of the semester as opposed to, hey, did their final project collect X amount of coats for this organization. So grades are based on unit tests. I have articles, ed puzzles requiring the answering of questions at higher level thinking skills. The students are evaluating their projects throughout the semester and making necessary adjustments. So I do take participation grades for that. There are unit tests over the materials that we cover. And then there's the bi-weekly evaluation of themselves and their group members. So for these bi-weekly evaluations, once the projects are kicked off, students complete these for themselves and other group members. I take the average of the students' scores, and that's what they earn. Surprisingly, students are extremely honest. Even though most are very grade motivated, they can be very brutally honest with their self-evaluations and where they think they haven't followed through. I share the peer evaluations with students through conferences every other week, and we talk about steps and how they can improve in these areas. So the rating scales go from 1 to 5, and students are asked to rate each of their group members each week. So how much work did the person, or how much did the person contribute? Did they contribute ideas, work, research, planning? How well does the person work with others? Does this person stay on task? How well does the person listen and share with the group? And then I also ask the students to list 2 or at least 1 positive contribution from the person that in the past 2 weeks, and then they can list areas needing improvement. So I assign students 2 final projects. One is a final group project, one is an independent project. About a month prior to the end of the semester, the final group project is assigned. Students have to present a PowerPoint or Google Slides presentation that has 7 slides. The slides need to include a description of the organization, the cause and why it's important to your group, your initial proposal that you presented, adjustments you had to make along the way, what you learned about working in teams, the positives and the negatives, and how you work through the negatives. Final results, were you able to reach your goals? If not, why? And then what would you do differently if you guys were to do this project again? And then finally, why should the nonprofit organization receive the $1,250 grant from Magnified Giving? And I remind the students that they need to use their persuasive speech that they have learned in their language arts classes as they present this final piece, because as a class, we vote. And the most persuasive presentations tend to win. I also assign a final individual project. This is assigned about 3 weeks prior to the end of the semester. The students are required to create and present 20 slides which cover their journey during the semester, and they have to record audio and narrate each slide. Students with a gifted identification need to use an app called Pecha, which gives the students 20 seconds per slide. So whatever they have to say it quickly. There are no words allowed on this slide, only an image that depicts what you're talking about. And then other students without gifted identifications, I allow them to have 20 slides, and they can present those using Google Slides, PowerPoint, along with a voice over technologies such as Loom, Screencastify, or Screencast-O-Matic. For the students without a gifted identification, their slides can have up to 30 seconds of voice recording each, and they can have a couple of words on a slide, but they are required to not read off their slides. And as I said before, each slide has to contain a picture that represents the title of the slide. For the final projects, students, all of them, are required to create 20 slides. The slides cover the following topics: magnified giving, nonprofits and grants, how they can give, the 3 ways to give, time, talent, and treasure, stress reactions. They talk about how their own bodies react, healthy ways to cope with stress. They talk about listening skills and explain what good listeners do. They talk about phone calls and how to prep for a phone call and how to get the information they need, voicemails, what they need to include, thank you notes, how to write them. They also talk about roles used in group work and which roles they used in their groups and which ones seem most important. They also talk about their personalities and the roles that were the best fit for them, and they can be more than one. They also talk about tips for working in groups. What advice would they give so projects are successful? They talk about leadership traits, what leadership skills they possess and how they use the skills, what skills they need to work on, grit and perseverance, what it is and how they used it, a project overview. Now, granted, they should have that already completed with the previous group project. Project results, the good and the bad, how they're going to use these skills going forward, and how they will make philanthropy part of their life going forward. So I wanted to show you a quick link to part of a student's Pecha presentation.
Magnified Giving's mission is to educate, inspire, and engage students in philanthropy, and to touch the impact of philanthropy. They donate to nonprofit organizations in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. A nonprofit organization is a business that has been granted tax-exempt status by the IRS because it furthers a social cause and provides a public benefit. A grant is a quantity of money, financial assistance given by a government organization or for a specific purpose. Unlike a loan, you do not have to pay back the money. You can give your time, talent, and treasure.
As you can tell by the criteria for the 2 final projects, a heavy emphasis is placed on the evaluation of their projects and evaluating whether or not their teams worked well together. If they could do this over again, what would they change? And bringing in those higher level thinking skills and that reflection is really what puts this type of service learning class at a higher level of rigor for these students. So there are lots of resources and links and worksheets that accompany this presentation, and I've placed all of those with the links into a PDF that will accompany this session. You can reach out to me at any time for questions about starting a service learning curriculum at your school. I will also provide in that PDF um, contact information to Magnified Giving and the Learning to Give website, which has a wealth of information and resources for teachers to use. Feel free to reach out to me at either my professional email or my personal email. I appreciate you attending. Hopefully you got a lot of useful information and can get started on teaching your students to give back to their communities. Thanks so much.